Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Get Real podcast. I'm your host, Blaine Mengel. In this episode, I got a lot of things to cover. We're going to hit on some things. I've been doing a deep dive over the last few weeks on some things, and I'd like to cover just a small portion of that. But before we get into that good stuff, this episode brought to you by Gamma Fishing Lines. Whether it's their Polyflex, which is a copolymer line, awesome line, stretch resistant, abrasion resistant, real castable stuff. They have Gamma Torque. That's their braided line. Just without question, top shelf line. And if you want to use a fluorocarbon that is second to none, use Gamma Edge. For all of those products, Black Knight Industries, Dale Black is the owner. For information on how to reach him and get your Gamma line, reach out to me, message me, and I will get you his information. We are chomping at the bit here in Pennsylvania. These rivers are fired up. It's March, and the water temperatures are already into the 40s. That means the smallies are eating. 75 fish days, I'm hearing, on the Delaware and Susquehanna rivers right now. Man, I am chomping at the bit. I have not been able to get out recently. So if you've been visiting my YouTube and seeing the YouTube shorts and the TikTok channel, Instagram, Facebook, all of my social media outlets, I haven't provided any new content because I've had some vehicle issues right now. And that reminds me, donations are greatly appreciated. Very much so. I appreciate my listeners. We've had a number of listeners. I've had people reach out to me about some ideas, which I'm really grateful for. So like I usually do, I'm going to start this one with a quote, but this is going to be a little bit different. This quote is going to be a long quote. I dug this up. I'm doing a study right now. I'm doing research and really going on a deep dive regarding some of the financial things that are going on. I mean, you just have to look around. You look around and you see the American dollar, the fiat dollar, the debt note is losing value. Nations all over the world renouncing it and going to what's really defined as a gold-backed currency. The BRICS formulation, those nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and a number of others, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, a whole bunch of different places now are going to this gold-backed currency. We are it's the greatest transition of wealth in human history right now. And as I was doing some research this week, some historical research, okay, I have learned very clearly, like I didn't already know this, and many of you probably already do, what we learned in history class was just not complete, and it's not really what happened. If you want to really know what happened historically in the United States, Incorporated, I'll get to that later, go back before 1900, when all the history books were confiscated. Just think of the word history, his story. History is written by the victor. I've been digging, and this quote is from a guy named Edward M. House. He was a Texas billionaire. He was an oil tycoon, right? And he wrote this memoir, this message, if you will, to President Woodrow Wilson back just prior, I believe it was just prior. If I'm wrong with that, somebody can correct me on that, but I believe it was just prior to the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. Woodrow Wilson received this. This is from Edward House. I'm going to read this. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can help people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security and as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. every American will be forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel. The word chattel means property. And we will hold the security interests over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secure transactions. Americans unknowingly or unwittingly delivering bills of lading, the birth certificate that we were registered under in the state when we were born. We all got that certificate of live birth, and then when it was registered with the state, whichever state you were born, it was sent back as a birth certificate. We'll get into more of that in some episodes coming up. Bills of lading to us will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent. Forever they'll remain economic slaves through taxation, secured by their pledges. In other words, we are consenting because we're pledging. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit. And they will be none the wiser. And not one man in a million could ever figure out our plan. If by accident, one or two of us should figure it out, I added of us in there, sorry, that's not part of the quote. We have in our arsenal plausible deniability. In other words, they can just say it wasn't true. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government. By putting liens and debts to the registrants, birth certificate, car registration, a fishing license, in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap to us huge profits beyond our wildest dreams. Beyond our wildest expectations, and leave every American a contributor to this fraud called social insurance. That's where the Social Security Act was birthed, okay? Without realizing it, they will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will empty the high office of the president of our corporation to foment this plot against America. Edward M. House wrote that to Woodrow Wilson and used the words plot against America and earlier the scheme that would benefit them and keep us as chattel, property, enslaved. Here's the one that really got me. Without hope. For all you Judeo-Christian Bible readers out there, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire realized is the tree of life. When a man is without hope, his heart becomes sick. And then also in the Judeo-Christian Bible, it says men's hearts will fail them in the last days for fear. Fear. Well, let's talk a little bit about that for a second. Because what I just read from Edward M. House to Woodrow Wilson, and by the way, Woodrow Wilson, in his last speech that he gave as president, I don't have the quote in front of me, but he basically admitted, he used these words, I destroyed my nation, my country, actually. And I made a huge mistake. I destroyed my nation. And he was talking about the creation of the Federal Reserve. So let's talk about this for just a second. It talks about hope deferred. This system that we are in, as I just read, was constructed to keep the chattel, the people, as property. So as in reading that and doing all my research right now, this financial system was created to keep us, the people, the living men and women in anxiety, in fear, in stress. And stress, to me, is the cause of almost every physical ailment or sickness out there, or emotional, quite frankly. In lack, depressed, divorced, discouraged, diseased, sick, as I said, because that keeps us in a lower frequency. We are spirit beings in a physical existence, not the other way around. And I'll be the first one to admit I have lived a good part of my life as a physical person seeking a spiritual outcome or a spiritual existence. Bob Proctor said something one time. One of his quotes were, the two things that ail most humans, that keep most of us from realizing our goals, are weakness of attention and poverty of imagination. Weakness of attention. I wasn't aware of that opposing idea that I was a spirit being in a physical existence, because I was so focused on how I felt all the time. I had a mentor who used to say, Blaine, acknowledge your feelings, but stop living by them. And that's not easy when you're hurting, right? When you're in pain, when you're frustrated, when you're sick. And that's what the system was designed to do, to keep us in a lower state of vibration, in a lower state of spirit, in a lower state of self. When all along in the human existence, we have this longing and this yearning and this desire to want to reach what the Bible called transfiguration, what the Buddhists and some yogis and some of the religions in the Far East call enlightenment. We wanted to reach that place where we actually recognize spirit first. At least I did. I'll speak for myself. So let's just go back. The Fed was created in 1913. It was created a little while before that, but it was actually launched. This whole plan and plot was launched back in 1913. And I'm not going to get into too much of that today. Do your research. It's very easy to find it. The Jekyll Island stuff and all the millionaires and gurus that were involved in the creation of the Fed. Then you also had, you had the removal of plant remedies, cannabis becoming illegal, psychedelic mushrooms becoming, taboo. Why? Because the Fed and pharmakia, if they're going to keep you sick, they're going to want to get a payoff from how they're going to make you better. And plants weren't going to be that payoff. So they created pharmaceuticals and pharma, big pharma, pharmakia. Do the research. It's Latin for witchcraft, for concoctions, for sorcery. That's what it means. It was all part of the plot. And these aren't my words. That word plot and scheme and without hope, that was written by one of the founders of the Federal Reserve, to our president, okay? If you keep the chattel, the property, poisoned, diet, I can go a mile there. We'll take a whole episode on diet and on food. Just a quick sidebar, since I have started doing this shot that I do every morning, my digestion is better now at 55 years old than it's ever been. I do a shot where I do olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, lemon juice. I squeeze a lemon, sometimes just a half a lemon if I'm running short on lemons, and cayenne pepper. And I do a shot of that on an empty stomach first thing every morning. I have a better appetite. I don't eat as much junk, and my digestion is so much better. Cayenne pepper is a natural blood thinner. It's just good stuff. It's a good way to start the day. I just wanted to add that. I'll get into more of that in the coming episodes. If you keep the chattel poisoned with diet and all the nonsense they're putting in. Do you know a doctor recently in a video that I just watched? He said, you want to know the most dangerous aisle in the supermarket? The toothpaste aisle. Wow. Because that's the first place that food goes into your body, is in your mouth. And they're killing the Bacillus salivarius, I think it's called, the bacteria that lives in your mouth that starts the process of breaking down your food. And now you have this food and it's not getting broken down properly. And we're in fast food, quick mode all the time. So 9 chances out of 10, I read you're supposed to chew each bite of food 30 to 50 times. How many of us do that? So now you're chewing food half the time, the amount of time you should to benefit digestion. You're killing all of this salivary bacteria that helps in the breakdown of your food, and you're expecting your belly to do it all for you. No wonder, Pepsid and Prevacid and Nexium and all these antacids, the sales are through the roof, and it's doing them every bit of good. It was all part of the plot. And then you have in the 1950s, we could talk forever here, but I'm jumping forward. FDR did the gold confiscation in 1933. That'll be another whole episode on that. And then Nelson Rockefeller was given charge of the educational system. The educational system was created it creates workers. It creates workers, not thinkers, because John D. Rockefeller, Nelson's great-grandfather or grandfather, I guess was his grandfather, he said, I want to create a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And so this educational system was in the works for a long, long time. The removal of a lot of our history books, after 1900, they changed a lot of the American history. And all you got to do is go back and start studying, especially around the Civil War. We have no idea what was really going on. That'll be another whole episode. But Nelson Rockefeller said this when he was given the headship over the Department of Education: give me 10 years and I'll change the world. Well, didn't he ever? Didn't he ever? Removing the history books, how about the 1040 form? Do research on that. Abraham Lincoln introduced and initiated the 1040 form as a gift to fund the Civil War because they were out of money. The United States was going bankrupt. And they used the 1040 form so that citizens, citi, municipal, zen, servant, municipal servant is what the word citizen means. It's a corporate word. It's a corporate identifier, okay? Lincoln did that so that they could fund the war. We've been gifting them ever since, I guess, huh? Another whole episode there. I say all that to say, what Edward House said did not come as a surprise to me, but man, was it like a shot. It was confirmation is really what it was. It was confirmation of things that I have believed and thought for a long, long time. Since I was a kid, I was born with this. I was born with this thing where I just never understood, why in the hell do we have to pay taxes? Why do we have to work? Why are we in wars? Do you know the United States Incorporated has only had something like 21 years since 1776 that it hasn't been at war? Did you know that the flag that most of us fly is a wartime flag? Did you know there was a peace flag? Did you know that Washington, D.C. is its own territory and has its own flag? Folks, that word education is from the Latin educo or educa with an A. It means to educe. Educe means to draw from within. Education is when someone or yourself recognizes what has been inscribed into the creation of you as a person, your I am now moment. In that moment, how have you been created? What's inscribed into you? And when you recognize what that is, you educe it or bring it forth from within. You cultivate it and draw it out and create with your life. And there have been times in my life as a singer where I have been doing that. There was times in my life as a bass fisherman, as a fishing guide, and especially with my TV show, where I was doing that. We were creating on the fly. I mean, one of the most common things people would say to me at trade shows was, you know what, Blaine and Chris Manley was the host of Backwoods Angler TV, and he made me look real good a lot of the time. One of the things that a lot of the people, a lot of my fans and a lot of people that would come up to the booth, and even if I just see people out, I'd have people walk up to me in a restaurant or Walmart or something. You know why we like your show so much, Blaine? Because you're just real. You're not out there pimping your stuff. We had sponsors, and we did a good job at getting the message out for our sponsors. We did a lot of product placement things, but I wasn't out there pimping stuff. And to a degree, sometimes as real as I was, may have cost us in some ways, because I wasn't out there acting and, doing the hooting and hollering and all that other stuff. I think there was a lot of people that actually liked the fact that I was creating, that I was original, and that I was just being me. I was being the me that I was created to be in that moment. There were times I dropped my rod and just went down to my knees one time on TV, on camera. We were up at a reservoir in New York State, and I had caught by probably 25 small bass, and I hooked one well over 4 pounds, and it broke my line at the boat. It just broke because I was fishing a jig, and I hadn't retied my jig, and I just collapsed in the boat, and it was just like, we kept it because it was what the moment created. It was what I created in the moment. I was a writer. I wrote 2 books. I used to write a lot of short stories. I've written probably 70 songs in my life. I didn't need to know what 7/2 divided by 9/4 was to do that. I had these things inscribed into my DNA, and education means to educe or bring that forth. How many of us are doing that with our lives today because of what I read to start this episode, because of this plot or this scheme or the lack of hope that you have today because you have to get up and do something you don't like to do? Just because they tell you you need to buy a fishing license or a gallon of milk, or here's the biggest fraud in human history, a bottle of water. Come on, folks. Really. So do your own research. Look that up. That is relatively easy to find. Edward M. House to Woodrow Wilson. It's right there in black and white. Not made up, not fiction. Right out of a memoir that the guy wrote to the President of the United States. We just got real, didn't we? And I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to cut this off. I had a few more things, but I'm going to make another episode with what else I had to say. Do me a favor, folks. If you like this episode, share it, follow, like, subscribe. Go to my YouTube channel, go to my TikTok channel, go to Facebook and Instagram. I do posts and reels and videos and all kinds of stuff. I'll be doing some more fishing content coming forth. And if you feel so inclined, donations are greatly appreciated. Thanks for joining me for this. More information on all those pages. Thanks for getting real with me tonight. Have a great rest of your week.